I'm Felix Levine, and welcome to Unlike Me, where I sit down with fascinating people I have nothing in common.
We're live.
Jason, thank you so much for taking the time, coming in. I'm super excited to have you on my show and trekking in after a late night.
Yeah, we got after it last night. It was Tyler Cameron's premiere party, so I haven't had a hangover like this in quite some time, but you know what? Sometimes you got to just jump into it, and that's what we're doing. We're jumping on the mic, so I don't know what to expect today.
You know what's fun, too, is today we're spending a lot of time together.
I know. We're doing a double dip.
We are, and this will come out a little bit later, but you have a little party tonight.
A little party, so I had my second book come out, and we did this whole book tour in Capital One cafes across the country, and we just wrapped it. We ended up traveling to like 12 cities in like a 2-3 week time period, and so we're like, you know what? We've been hustling. Let's just like throw a party. So we're just throwing this. We're like, enough of the money talk, enough of the book talk. Let's just party. So tonight we're just gonna party.
What? How many people are we expecting?
So we're doing a pre-party that's like 6 to 9, cool. And there's gonna be about like 80 people there.
Great.
And then we're gonna do an after party, and there'll be more people there, like 100 plus. But we have some cool stuff. We'll have like there's a live piano player there. It's no Serena Kerrigan party. Not by any means.
We missed you there, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Once I saw those photos,
we had Hawk.
I know Hawk was there, but once I saw his photos, I was like, I need to go. But yeah, so I missed that. But yeah, we got live music. We got all different. So we have a magician that'll be there. We have a live painter who will be there tonight. Wow. So we're gonna have some fun. We're having fun.
So what's the book tour been like, and what's the reception been like to this book so far?
It's been really good. So what was awesome is that because Capital One Cafe sponsored it, they were able to give all tickets for free to attend. You just had to reserve it. Max capacity at each of them was like 100 to 150, and all of them sold out, which was great. And you know, my background's being on reality TV and The Bachelor, and to pivot into a different lane while still dabbling into that one's a challenge business-wise. And what was really cool is that when we made it, the book tour very engaging, games, people were speaking, sharing things, and 95% of like all conversation was money related to the book and finance, where you expect it to be like 50% to the book and then 50% to like Bachelor or finance or personal stuff, you know? Right. So in my head, I'm like, this is working. It's working. And we got such great feedback. So it was a heck of a book tour. It was so much fun, and it was a blast.
Are you done now touring? And
Done. I'm like, give me a breather. I'm on my last leg here. So next week, this is kind of cool. Next week, I'm golfing in Matthew McConaughey's event. Sick. And that's fun. But then going to Stagecoach, which is fun, but Stagecoach is some work stuff too. Yeah. So I don't know if people would call that vacation, but I think in May, I'm going to just like hibernate. Just like not talk to humans. I'm going to like turn my phone off. I'm going to do like a 24-hour cleanse where I take my phone off for 24 hours and just like get re-centered.
Good.
Yeah.
So before I even forget, because I asked my guests when we get in right in the beginning, is there a little tidbit, a little story, a little something the world doesn't know about you from what's already out there?
Well, spoiler, hungover. Not often hungover, but I am today. I would say, I was thinking, first thing that came to mind, I think about like childhood. And then with childhood, for some reason, I think about grandparents. Mm-hmm. And, one thing that's kind of crazy is just my whole upbringing is interesting. I have a Jewish liberal mother, Catholic conservative father, like two totally different mindsets, but it works as a result of that. I don't really talk much religion and politics, especially on like platforms and stuff. But as a result of that, I think it really helped me understand other people's perspectives and point of views. And like, you have to be willing to listen, and you can't just speak. You have to be willing to listen. And I think watching them as a kid grow, like just how they parented and how they worked and how they settled on discussions really helped shape me. But then I think about my grandparents and my grandfather. It's kind of like a total random fact, but he was in the Korean War. Wow. And he was shot, and his superior was told, we have to leave him behind. And his superior went against his commander's orders and went back and got my grandfather and saved him. If not, my grandfather would have died there. Wow. And I think about events in life like that one, or so many others, or the smallest decisions you make today and the impact they could have on generations and just the outcome of so many things. And so when you asked me a question, it's like the first thing I randomly thought about, but it's blessed that he served, blessed that he made it through. And it's wild how like the smallest events can have such huge outcome on all of our lives.
Is there a small event in your life specifically that you can pinpoint as one that has now shaped where you are and who you are today?
I mean, I think the big one is like, even why I'm on this podcast, right, is when I got asked to go on The Bachelor, in the world, everybody. So I was like a corporate jockey, man. I was just like, you tell me where to go, I'll be there. I was up early, out late every night, like, at the networking events every night, had a dinner, a networking event. I was a hustler, and I moved 4 or 5 times, and then I got promoted from New York to Seattle. Right. And it was just like I was going. I had the rocket on my back, going to the top, and then The Bachelor comes with an opportunity, and everyone's like, "Dude, what are you doing? You're not a reality TV guy. Like, what are you doing?"
And you're how old at that point?
At that point, 29.
Okay.
29. And I have a podcast, Trading Secrets, where I talk very openly about numbers. So I like to, and the book's called Talk Money to Me. So I like to just preface that before I start talking numbers, and people are like, what's wrong with this guy? But 29 years old, my title at the time was senior corporate banker, vice president. Everyone's a vice president of a bank, but it was on the debt side of the business. Cool. And I was making 165 base, 110 signing bonus. And then you could make up to like 2 to 3 times your base based on performance. Yeah. So 29 in 2017, right? Lab before all this inflation shit. It was good. So everyone, like the people at the bank, my dad, my mom, my brothers, even my best buddies were like, dude, this would be cool, but what the fuck you doing? Yeah. But it was that decision. It was the first time I kind of did something like way off the beating path that was against what like everyone told me to do, and it has shaped every form of my life. Literally.
Do you think you did it because you wanted to maybe, I don't know, do that thing that everybody is telling you not to do, and be like, I'm Jason, I have full control over my life, and you know what? This is my life, and I'm going to show you that I have control over my life.
I think there was a little rebellion in it because the first book I wrote is called The Restart Roadmap. Okay, so I was when I got put in a position with the bank where they had said to me, you either have to restart your career here and get rid of all your other media stuff, or you can go restart your career and go do it yourself. Right. So I called it The Restart Roadmap. But what I talk about in that book is that I was the checkbox guy. I was like, tell me where to go, I'll go. I was like, in school, let's do what we got to do, get the MBA. Like, I was a very blueprint guy. And I think me going on the show was like, for the first time, I was like really rebelling. Like, never got like detention, never got suspension. I was always like a good kid. Right. And I always did what my parents wanted me because that was like my security. Like, if I did what they thought it was okay, then I was doing the right things. And it was the first time I feel like I took like a total rebellion move. And the reason I did it, quite frankly, there was a lot of reasons, but the big one, I was totally burnt out. Right. I was in a career where like I was living my identity through my title. Like I didn't even know who I was anymore. I was just an empty suit. And I hit a point, I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I'm 29, like I'm miserable. I'm sitting here in Seattle. I don't know anyone here because the bank just moved me 3,000 miles away. Right. ABC's coming to me for an opportunity. Like, who the hell do I think I am to be like, no, I'm too good for this? Right. So yeah, I think there was like a little rebellion in there.
Did you? Now, obviously, I'm sure, and we'll talk about it after, money has always been important to you, but was notoriety or fame or any being in the public eye important to you when you get the call from ABC, or even prior to that, where you're like, damn, I'd love to be, quote, famous at some point in my life?
Yeah, I grew up with Rob Gronkowski, and so got to see like all the things
when you guys were young?
Yeah, we were young, cool. And still buddies today. And he, it was always really cool to watch what he was doing and how he was doing it, but also be behind the scenes of a lot of his stuff. Right. And I saw his agent one time working and hustling. I said to myself, like, that would be really cool. Yeah. So before I left for the show, my thought was like, maybe I could be a sports agent. Like, I'm already in Seattle because now I could just pop down to LA if the banking thing doesn't work. The idea of like being famous or thinking anything like that were a public figure or whatever you would call it, that was never like, I don't know. That's nothing that I've ever like, 29 years before that, I don't think I did one thing that would connect to that, So like, that was never like on my radar. But of course, when you go on the show, and when I make the decision to, of course you're thinking like,
Yeah.
what can happen?
Right.
Like, could I end up, I don't know, like, where's the upside? Of course you're thinking. Anybody who says they're not is lying
For
to
sure. And you as being, business oriented, it's
Yeah.
like, fuck, I get all these different potential opportunities. And
Yeah.
you know.
I didn't know because I was very unfamiliar with social media.
Right.
So I didn't know what the opportunities looked like.
Right.
But I figured, I don't know, there could be some opportunities that come from this. Like, let's roll the dice. Like, let's have fun.
Right.
And then when you're in the show, it also is like kind of a game of Survivor. Like most people won't tell you that, but it becomes competitive in the fact that you're trying to make it another day. Like, you know what I mean? So it was fun. It was different, and I had no idea what was going to come after it. But of course, everyone's thinking about it. And now in 2024, if anyone ever comes on your show in 2024 and they say they want a reality TV show without some sort of direction or motivation to become Instagram or TikTok famous or monetize, they are lying through their teeth because now it's too transparent. Now we all know. This was 2018 where people didn't really understand what this whole thing was yet.
So I want to go back to banking for a second. So one of the ways we're unalike is you have a background in banking and for a long time. I'm curious how that initially not only shaped you, but also your relationship to money. I heard you talking about in another podcast, when you're 21, 22, just like slapping your card down and maybe because you were insecure and you wanted to show people, I got it, you know what I mean? I'm curious who that Jason was when you were in banking on both, again, personal and professional level, and then also then as you grew up through it, how it changed your relationship with yourself and money as well.
Yeah. So my relationship with money began at being like, wait, there's a lot happening here. I was at 16. My grandfather was an oral surgeon, and he sat me down, and he had told me this story about how he took his money and moved it with a financial advisor. And this was a boutique, and regulations that are in place today weren't in place then. And that financial advisor, what he says is he kept telling me when to buy and never when to sell. Well, I learned that he was only making money off when he would buy. And then he started doing more due diligence and more like research on it. And he got completely swept for like 30% of his net worth. Took all of his money out and said, I'm going to manage money myself. I'm going to learn how to do it. And so at 16, he sat me down and opened all of his accounts and said, this is my life work. These are the numbers. Stories change, context shift. Numbers don't lie. I'm going to teach you how to invest. And at 16, he did. So that was when my relationship was like, I was just drawn to numbers. The guy that was the banker at like 21, 22, 23, 24, Jason, he was hyper sensitive, hyper insecure, and was living like almost all areas of life through the image that he wanted everyone else to see and had no connection to himself whatsoever. I do therapy now like every 2-3 weeks. I didn't know how to express what even a feeling was at that point, right? I had, if I had feelings, bury them, move them to the side, you got to keep moving forward, right? So that person personally and professionally was a lot different than I am today.
But why do you think you were insecure at that point in your life?
I think 21, 22, like I came off such a high in college. I don't know about you. I loved college. It was the best. I played soccer there. We didn't even have a football team, so we were cool.
Right.
As captain of the soccer team, I just had the best time. And then I moved to a city that I don't really know anybody there and starting to work. And you're kind of like, what am I doing with my life? Is this right? Am I making good money? Am I not making good money? Am I on the right path? It was 2010, so it was after like the mortgage crisis and everything. And I feel like I was just kind of lost. And so I talk about this theory of behavioral-based budgeting, which is the idea that when you hear budgeting, it's like, ugh, like you're thinking Excel files, don't buy the cup of coffee or the drink, right? But what I'd say is like, go print out 2-3 credit card statements. Don't do any numbers, don't do any adding. Just look at it. And when you see an outlying number, just do some self-awareness and say, why did I spend that? Was it for me? Was it for someone else? Am I a people pleaser? Was it self-sacrifice? Am I trying to show something that I don't have? What is it? And so what I did when I did this in 21, it was like, whoa, the bar tabs were exorbitant. I was like, I know I don't drink. I mean, people are going to be like, this guy okay? He's bar tabs and he's hungover today. I promise this isn't the norm. And partying tonight. But I started to say, like, there's no way I was drinking that much. How am I spending this much?
Right.
Started to do some, just like self-analyzing. And to your point, what we talked about was like, I was dealing with a lot of insecurities and lack of confidence, but putting the card down made me feel secure and cool. And as a result of that, I recognized that actually wasn't a spending issue. That was like an internal me issue. And so I always encourage people to try the behavioral-based budgeting.
Do you feel like you're secure now?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone to some extent has some insecurities. I'm always working, I'm always growing. But I have a lot of self-security, which is built on just like connection to myself and working on connection to myself. One of my biggest issues my whole life was outside validation, always seeking outside validation, something I still struggle with, but working on. And you have to have self-validation, right? It's not the accolades or the book or the next deal or whatever it might be. That is never, ever what will fulfill you, ever. Because it will come, it will go, and then you'll keep chasing. And so I feel like I'm in a lot better position today than I ever have been.
I'm curious, does seeking outside validation, does that get exacerbated because you are in the public eye, and so now that outside validation is almost on a scale of way more than just your inner circle that it maybe once was?
Oh my God, yeah. I think everyone, though, to some extent, whether there's like 2 people in your circle or there's 2,000 or 2 million, I think if the people in your circle feel a certain way about you or something, that still can impact you at the same level. Right. I will say there's a whole lot of growing when you're dealing with outside noise and comments and rumors and false narratives and mislabeling from people that you've never even met or spoke to. That's a big thing. But I think it's kind of more like a therapy talk, but like my inner child, like when I was a kid, we're all chilled. Like all of us have our child just running through us 24/7. I always wanted to be like, all right, I got to be the best on the team. I got to be the captain. I got to be the top goal scorer. I was always, that's how like my brain worked at a small age. And if I could tell the coach I was the best or the coach knew I was the best, then like that made me feel safe, as weird as that is. So that was actually, it's kind of like an Enneagram 3. It's that just achieving is what actually creates security. But there's so much emptiness under that, if that makes sense.
How do you try to ever take moments to reflect or to find the satisfaction in when you have positives in your life today? Or because I know you're go and you're juggling a lot of different things. Yeah. But I personally think it is important to have those moments with yourself, and I'm curious for you as somebody who is successful and highly successful, if you are able to take some of that time for yourself.
I struggle with it. I struggle with it. Like I had 5 days off last week where I was just at my house and the dogs weren't there. And I was like really having a tough time with it because I don't know if anyone connects to this, but my state of discomfort is actually not doing anything. Right. So I think a lot of people find that as a state of comfort. To me, that's my discomfort. Yeah. Why? Because I have to I really got to sit with myself. I got to connect with myself. I have to get uncomfortable with like some of the hard stuff. And if you think about when we experience pain as humans, there's usually 4 things that we do to cope with that pain. One of the things is medicating. Right. Now you think medicating, you think medication. No, but there's so many different ways that people medicate. Numbing is one way. Mm-hmm. How people numb could be things that are productive or unproductive, right? Some could be drugs, some could be actually exercising. Mm-hmm. Like exercising can be a form of numbing. For me, I think staying busy in work is a form of numbing. So I need to do more of it. I'm working on it and we're getting there.
So I want to pivot to talk money to me. Yeah. Obviously I want that whoever's listening right now can get a little bit of insight into what it's about. Grab their copy on Amazon. What was the original inspiration behind the book? And at what point, like any project, I'm sure you're like, am I going to do this, not do this? What then was like, okay, no, I need to write this book? Yeah.
So we'll go back to the trading secrets talk for a second, just the money thing, right? Because I think the reason I like talking about numbers is for the good or bad. Like when I tell you I lost on a trade or I got my ass completely swiped on this deal, I think through that we can learn a lot of lessons, right? So the podcast, that's kind of what we do with the guests that I have on. So to answer the question, HarperCollins is who I got the book deal with. And it was always going to be a 2-book deal. And there's going to be a career book and a personal finance book.
Okay.
And that was like the brand I was building. And so that was when that deal got inked. It was how the book business works, which is interesting. So it was about a couple $100,000 advance. And you can't earn more than that until the profitability per book that's sold becomes greater than the 200 or 250K, whatever it was. So
will you break that down though?
yeah. So suppose, I actually don't know. I gotta, because it changes, but suppose the book on Amazon sells for $23. Okay. Let's suppose that of the $23, $2 is actually the profit. Okay. So that's the profit margin. So that profit margin would be $2. That would go towards the 250,000 for every book that's sold.
Yeah.
And then it chops away, right, based on the total units sold. So to make more than the advance at that advance, it's a challenge. Now, I actually don't know the exact profit number per book, but it's very tough to hit, and I have to get a report, and I don't think we've hit it yet. But so that was the basis of the book. Now with Talk Money to me, the idea was, okay, we know it's a finance book. What do we do with this?
Right.
And what I was thinking is like, okay, my background's in banking. I go on this love show. And, very much in the public eye for good and bad. I've showcased a lot of my love life. And so I'm like, wait a second. These are two areas like we are struggling in America. Like we are struggling with our finances. And we know from a holistic perspective, statistically, we're struggling with love.
Right.
I know you're killing it. but as a whole, right? So when you marry the two, though, then it's just, I know I could bore you with all these statistics and stuff, but it becomes like an absolute disaster. So we created that thesis, then we backed it up with research, and then we came up with the idea of, let's do 2 chapters where I talk about where I screwed up. Let's do 8 chapters where each chapter is a question. The answer is a number that you have to know about your personal finances, and then a number you should know about your partner if you're married or cohabitating with them, and how to grow as a unit.
So I think it's awesome. Full disclaimer, although I've been listening to a lot of your recent interviews, I only knew I was gonna have you on Friday, like earlier this week. So I put in the order for my book, and it's on the way. But I'm excited. I'm really excited to read it.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the overall premise, I'm pretty on there. So there's a couple questions, and I love to kind of get your insights and to maybe play devil's advocates on some points.
Yeah, let's do it.
So in terms of, a relationship, right? And I love, like, I think it's so interesting that money is so taboo for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting that especially in relationships, it's so taboo.
Yep.
And I love that, like, I love the concept of this book, and I think it's great that it exists.
Yeah.
For you, just like kind of high level, why is money so taboo? And then why in relationships, if there is just a one sentence for both, why is it even more, in my opinion, more taboo in relationships?
I think we weren't taught money.
Okay.
In any system, any school system. When we were in kindergarten, you're like, you have a stomachache, you're taught how to go to the nurse and express that. So we're not taught it. And then if we're not taught it, how the hell do we know how to talk about it?
Right.
And then I think what happens with money is there's a lot of gaslighting and weaponizing and blaming and shaming and power and leverage if used incorrectly. So I think it has to do, my thesis is we weren't taught it. And because we weren't taught it, we certainly don't know how to talk about it.
Are there different, and I don't know if you touch on this in the book, are there different stages of relationship where certain things should be spoken about and maybe more in-depth, less in-depth? Obviously your first date is different than when you're about to get engaged or getting a house together.
Totally.
So like, how do you kind of gauge when you talk about this, both in the book and then also for you and how you work now?
Totally. So anyone listening to this that's married, cohabitating, or they're on their way to that, okay? We know that those couples, 50% of them don't feel comfortable having money conversations. We know the ones that do have those conversations, 73%, so almost 3/4, say that money becomes a material point of tension in the relationship. So half of them don't have the ability to talk.
Real quick?
Of course, yeah.
So on those half,
yes,
right? Is it is it black and white as in like I will not speak about it, or is there also kind of like a spectrum where it's like, oh, I'll tell you about my credit score, but I don't want to tell you about what I'm spending on each month? Or
Yeah,
like, how's that?
Based on the research, what they said was that that group of people just stated, I don't feel comfortable having these conversations, and as a result of them, I don't have them.
Got it.
So they didn't specify like exactly. Then of the half that's like, I'll talk about it, we know that it was 3/4 said that it becomes a point of tension.
Okay.
And then of those 3/4, 73%, they studied that group, over 50% of them said that money issues is leading to decreased intimacy. So then there's even more statistics out there, like with married and cohabitating couples, 43%, one person will commit some form of financial infidelity. Financial infidelity is material cheating and manipulation and lying through finances. It's like the equivalent of infidelity, but with money. Okay, now stay with me here. Money arguments are the second leading reason for divorce. Infidelity, not financial infidelity. Infidelity is the number one.
Right.
Those who commit financial infidelity have a high propensity to commit infidelity.
Yeah.
So there's all these links when it comes to married and cohabitating couples. So the golden rule is, if you are married, if you're cohabitating, you have to know it all. You got to know the net worth. You got to know where the accounts are. You got to know annual spend. You got to know credit score, income. These are things you have to know. And when you talk about them, you have to do it in a very, very healthy way. And healthy way is, again, no blaming, shaming, or weaponizing. Now, how early you get into it, if you're dating, if you're going on a first date, it's got to be customized. It has to be customized. I always say, like, there's ways to have fun with money conversations. Like, if I asked you right now, if I said, name your relationship with money in 3 words, what words would you pick? Even if you came up with 1 or 2, what would they be? Relationship with money. Like, what does money mean to you in 3 words?
Freedom.
Yeah, that's one of mine.
Ever evolving.
Yep.
Important.
Great.
You know?
Right? So like those are 3 things right now that I now know about your money relationship. The first one, you didn't even think about it, was freedom. Right? So money to you, maybe you like your nice things and whatever it might be, but like it gives you freedom and flexibility. I know that having your freedom to run your business and have this podcast studio, obviously it's more important. So you could be on a first date, have questions like that, or like one that's way more fun is like, Felix, what is one thing you spend too much money on, and you spend too much money on it, and you're not going to adjust that unless you go completely broke? What would you say your answer is?
Uber to the airport.
Ubers. Okay. So Uber, right?
Uber to the airport.
Uber to the airport specifically.
That is such a waste of money.
Yeah.
When you like hype it, especially in New York, you could technically take the subway for $2, so you pay $110, but it's just like
it's such an astronomical difference, right?
It is.
But like those are conversations that you could have. Another one would be, you win. You could pick any amount of money. You win $50,000 today. You got to spend it in 24 hours. How do you spend it, right? So there's different there's ways you can introduce money conversations in like a fun, easy way, as opposed to like, what's your net worth, bro? Right. Tell me what your credit score is first date. But it's got to be customized because everyone has different relationships with money and comfort.
Now, for you, as opposed to the dating stage, maybe getting engaged, married, getting home together, kids. So for you, it's really when the cohabitating and marriage, or when is like what I guess, for people listening, and if they're trying to apply it to their relationships, what's the mindset as you progress during your relationship that you should be not only just talking about it, but then also being proactively taking steps to better the healthy relationship when it comes to the financial and obviously then your intimate life.
Totally. So I think the absolute golden rule is, if you're going to get married in this book, these 8 numbers, you have to know these 8 numbers. You have to. But what I would tell people is that we know that the more you're open and honest with money conversations in a healthy way, the higher propensity for you to be unified with your partner, and the more likelihood for success in the relationship. So I would say, if we know historically that what we're doing currently isn't working, and we feel a little uncomfortable or discomfort having these conversations, even if we're just starting to date, we know that having them, if done in a healthy way, can really increase the likelihood of our relationship working out.
Right.
The problem is with money is there's so much gray area.
Yeah.
Like I'm assuming this person and this person, oh, you're going to pay for this and you're going to pay for this. Well, this is how I was brought up. So there's so many assumptions, and then assumptions aren't discussed. And then that gray area builds resentment, and resentment ruins relationships.
Right.
All from things that were just assumed based on who you are, why you are, and what your relationship is.
I think it's interesting too, you know, like I've been in an unhealthy relationship before. I'm now in a very healthy one. And so you can also, and so I think what's interesting is like the financial aspect also transfers very direct. There's a high correlation between an unhealthy relationship and how you speak about money, or how you also feel yourself speaking about it.
Yeah.
In both an unhealthy and a healthy one.
Yeah.
And like, even I think something, you know, that I found works for at least us now is there's multiple different ventures that I'm starting. Obviously, like I'm trying to be extra cognizant of money because you need capital for some of these ventures. And it's like something as simple as, hey, we went out to dinner twice last week. Let's cook at home for the next the next week. Like that, like I need to stop spending money on stupid things because I'm trying to start XYZ.
Yeah.
I think like dialogue like that has already is just kind of also just shines a light on what your priorities are, what why you're doing that, right? Like it's not that I don't want to go to dinner, it's that I want to set myself up so that hopefully in the next 20 years we can go to dinner whenever we feel
whatever
like
you
it,
want. Yeah, you're being disciplined and committed.
Correct.
Right?
And I'm curious for you, how did you, when you were building out this book, think about the priorities that, you know, taking into consideration what all the priorities might be for two different partners, and then how to set boundaries when it comes to money and the comfort level that one might have, because I think that a lot of stress comes from when you're uncomfortable.
Of course.
You know? And so for you, how are the priorities kind of set in the book on talking about money and having those discussions?
Yeah, I think it actually can, even that one question of like, if suppose I did ask you, like, if you won $50K today, how are you spending it? The idea of that question is I could start to understand how you prioritize your spending.
Right.
And I think that's where couples miss in a big way, is they don't understand what that other person values. And because they don't understand the priority of what they spend and why they spend it, it builds retention and then the shame and blame game, right? So if you don't enjoy shopping on Amazon, it does absolutely nothing for you, but you're living with, Serena, and let's say there's boxes endlessly, and you don't see value on that, and you think that like financially you guys need to get in a better page, you're going to like be like, what the hell you do? I've heard friends do it all the time. Well, it's Amazon, blah, 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 blah. But if you sit down and say, listen, this is the priority to me. Number one, number two, number three. Here are the top three things I want to spend my money on.
Right.
Even if you can't see eye to eye on any of that, you have to understand that's the priority to them. But if that's the case, maybe list 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 has to be cut. But it all starts with those conversations. And so what I would say is sit down with your partner, understand where money, this is like the chapter on where annual spend is, right? At the end of the day, money, it's all that. It's inflows and outflows, period. Inflows, outflows.
It's literally just, it's numbers together.
It's it. What comes in, what goes out, and what the difference of it, what can you do with it? How can you make money on it, right? And so you sit down with this one chapter, and it gives an exercise for partners to go through their annual spend. Say, hey, where can we make changes? Where can we not make changes? I do this practice where you could like red, yellow, green it, then talk about it. So there's practices to put things in place to prioritize your spending and cut where things aren't a priority. But the biggest thing I think is not weaponizing, blaming, or shaming your partner when they tell you that their priority is spending on something you don't see eye to eye with.
All right, now we're going to take a very quick break because this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. Summer's around the corner. Men's hygiene is as important as it's ever been. And I have a couple of different products that I want to share with you because I've been using Manscaped products for quite literally years. And if you're a gentleman that doesn't have them yet, you're very much missing out. Now, not every man has children, but every man is responsible for their 2 boys, little, big boys, whatever, every gentleman is different, below the waist. Join over the 10 million men worldwide who use Manscaped products by going to manscaped.com and using my promo code ULM for 20% off and free shipping. Now, if you're a gentleman listening to this out there, you've probably been in the situation where you're grooming yourself, taking care of everything and all the business down there, and you're like holding your breath, making sure that you don't hit the wrong spot. You know what I'm talking about? I want to introduce the Lawnmower family, which now has the Lawnmower 3.0 Plus, the 4.0 Pro, and the 5.0 Ultra. I mean, 3 ball trimmers, like that's awesome. Now, when you're on the go, it's even better. They have like this little travel case. They have this travel lock feature, which means that it doesn't just randomly turn on when it's pressed up against something. They've thought about everything over at Manscaped. This right here is on the cutting edge of cutting balls. All that being said, go to manscaped.com right now. Use my promo code ULM and you'll get 20% off and free shipping. Again, manscaped.com, 20% off, free shipping, promo code ULM. I'll see you there. I'm curious what you've observed in the differences on how men and women approach money and in relationships as well.
Yeah. Well, I can speak to the numbers at a holistic perspective. Right. All the numbers out there say that as the earnings increase in the household, the likelihood of the currently, and I think it's changing in a big way, the likelihood of the male taking full responsibility and managing the money is like 70-some%. It's like 71%. It's in the book. So right now, higher household incomes are being managed and run, the finances, majority of them, almost 3/4, by the man. Now, there's some problems with that. The first problem being that women are continuing to outlive men, right? So there's a shift there of what happens when, I mean, this is like tough conversation, but like the individual expires and you're left with, are you prepared for that, right? So I do think that number is shifting in a big way, but there's also a couple statistics out there that are mind-blowing. There's something called, have you heard of the gray divorce?
No.
Okay. The gray divorce is that people over 50 right now are getting divorced at a rate 2x than they did a couple decades ago, and over 65, 3 times, which is really interesting.
You know what's funny? My grandparents, God rest their soul, is they got divorced after 55 years of marriage when they were like 70. And my mom always thought it was the most beautiful thing ever, even though it was her parents, because she was like, they cared enough to do it.
Yeah.
So just little insight, but I think it's very interesting.
That's really,
and is there a reason specific behind
I think
it?
I think there could be a lot of reasons in that, just like societal things are changing. I mean, like, I think that you're seeing the wage gap is starting to shrink, and I think eventually it's going to flip. I just think there's more freedom and flexibility, and times have changed. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that, absolutely, it was like, excuse my language, it was a fucking joke. Women could get credit cards.
Yeah.
That is insane. So I think as we continue to grow more independent and more free, we say, hey, we only have so many more years on this life. We are not going to be stuck in a place where we don't want to live a life of happiness like your grandparents, right? Now, what was interesting in this study that I read is that in that great divorce period, they said that women in that space, 50 and over, after a divorce, have a income shift decrease on average between 30 and 40%. Wow. So what also is, there's some takeaways there, is like the impact of post-nupts and pre-nupts is just so important, at least in my perspective. And with post-nupts, I think the biggest thing is whoever the caretaker is at home, if you're putting your career on the sidelines and your earnings on the sidelines, you're missing a decade, 2 decades, maybe 3 decades of increased achievement, increased work, increased earnings, increased value. If all that is being put on the side to take care of your family in a post-nuptial agreement, if you don't have one, like, you can make sure that you're in a good space if things don't work out. And it's like, the crazy thing is, when we talk about money, and this is where I get pissed off, it's like, we know, and no shame for anyone that smokes cigarettes, no shame, but we know that cigarettes aren't healthy, right? Period. My grandmother wasn't aware of the impacts of cigarettes when she was smoking them at 40, 50. Then she heard about them and she changed. But with money, we hear, all the stats are there. We know that, like, us not talking about them, us not having prenups, us not having postnups, the success rate of relationships, like, we know this stuff, but we still won't do anything. And my theory is, like, I have the theory that, like, when we, like, if I have, okay, today I woke up with a bad headache. What did I do? Water, Tylenol. If I woke up with a big toothache, go to the dentist. You're cooking, you cut yourself, and it's like bleeding everywhere. You're bleeding everywhere. You got to go to urgent care and get stitches. And with finance, it doesn't create these pain points. It just slowly creates like a slow burn.
But why?
Because the system is set up to profit off that. Right. If credit card interest rates are 30%, and I clock you in the face every time I need a payment, and you feel that punch every time, they're not going to make 30%. So there's so much profitability in people not doing the right things that they don't create the toothache. They don't create the cut to the finger. They don't create the morning hangover headache. That's how it's set up. It's set up for us to, unless we be proactive, we will fail.
I'm curious in your past relationships where you noticed, or maybe I guess reflecting on now, and I'm sure you touch on it both in the book and think about it, were there moments when it came to money that now you look back I should have done differently, and maybe like if you have like a top 3 on past relationships and how you should have approached it money-wise?
Oh yeah, I mean, in the book, I kind of outlined the first couple chapters. I outlined this a little bit. I'm like, here I am, I lent over $100 million. I'm a numbers guy. Told you 16. I was learning this stuff. Got my MBA. I'm like, this is my thing, and here I am, totally caught in the love clouds and avoided every conversation. I moved in with my ex. I didn't know one number that I tell everyone to know. We didn't have one conversation about it, and on top of it, we rescued two golden retrievers and also didn't have a contract. Now, what's crazy is you think about...
Now, let me interject. Was it an active decision? Looking back, was it active or a subconscious decision to not have those conversations about it?
It was, I think, having the conversations. Again, I like to learn and lead with my mistakes. I think having the conversation's tough. And I think it's even for someone like me, it's work. And it's easier to just not worry about it. It's easy to just push it aside. That's the path of least resistance. But that path is what actually creates resistance. And so, even with the dogs, it's hard to think about a dog as an asset because we love and adore these are everything. But there are a lot of attorneys out there making their careers off dog custody battles.
It's crazy.
And, in state laws, dogs are considered assets. So things like that, understanding where things are going to go, why they're going to go there, and how they're going to go there, and how you're going to split bills, and what's the process, and are you paying rent, are you not paying rent, and all these things, all these conversations. It took us a little long to have those. Now, I will say, I want to preface this. I believe not having those put us in harm's way. I do believe resentment was built from those conversations. I don't believe that's what ultimately broke us, but it definitely had a negative impact for sure.
And in terms of that relationship, I've heard you talk about it, and I think I'm curious for you, and I'm sure when you were younger, you past relationships and breaking up, but breaking up in the public eye and having to go through that, how much different is that than not being in the public eye?
You can't compare. You cannot compare it in any form.
I guess what part was worse, or I guess maybe affected you the most of being in the public eye and going through a public breakup?
Probably false narratives and just misunderstandings. I think the biggest challenge with any breakup, and especially one in the public eye, is you've shared so much of your story, and so people want to know the story. And when you get into that, even though things don't work out, you still have love, care, and respect for that person, right? And so getting into conversations like that, in my opinion, are just so unproductive because there's going to be 3 sides plus to the story, right? There's going to be
200,000 of people that
my perspective, her perspective. Obviously, those aren't going to connect. If they connected, we'd probably still be together. And then there's going to be what's taken from it. And I think the best path forward is to honor and respect what was, and honor and respect what is, and that's the biggest challenge, is probably just continue, even at times when you're tempted to get out there, say something, just honor what was and honor what is,
Is it, is a public breakup more painful?
The hardest thing about a public breakup, or one of the hardest things when it connects to pain, is it's continually there.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're still like, look, that was 10 months ago. We're on a podcast we're talking about, right? If I go to my For You page on Instagram, I'll see stuff. You know what I mean? If I go to DMs, there will be messages about that. Like, oh, did you see this or this or this, right? So it's one of these situations, like if you think about, like I think about an ex I had, like my ex before I ever went on The Bachelor or whatever. I ran into her one time. I didn't really hear much. We moved our separate ways.
Right.
Don't see her ever. Don't see her online ever. Like, I hope she's doing well, but like, you part of grieving is like moving on. So you're not caught back into that. That's probably where the pain points come. Yeah.
How does Jason take care of Jason when it comes to, well, even in this particular situation, because it is fairly recent.
Yeah.
But then also like, making sure that you're okay, because ultimately like you're you, and the people that are around you care about you.
Yeah, for sure.
And whatever rumors who cares?
Yeah.
But how do you take care of yourself?
I think it's a great question. And I think the first thing that you just said was the people that take care of you, right? And I think so many people go through life surrounding themselves with people that truly aren't there for their happiness.
Right.
And if you don't have people that are celebrating you and congratulating you and truly smiling for when you have success and you're not doing the same, that is a huge red flag. Because in times of disarray like this, and we will all experience disarray at some capacity, that is my rock. My life's work are my friends and my family, and those are the people when I needed to lean on hard. I don't like to lean on people. I always like to be the person others can lean on. I had to lean on them hard.
Right.
And I would tell anyone that's going through a tough time is like, lean on your foundation hard. Do not get caught in numbing. Do not get caught in toxic behaviors. And just know, and the biggest thing is thumb point. Do not finger point. Look in the mirror. Grow yourself. Do not put it onto others. Do not project onto others. Do not talk shit about others. Work on yourself. And so for me, that's what allowed me to like grieve in like a super, what I would consider a healthy way.
How hard is it, or how hard was it for you to, when you get engaged to somebody, you think this is the person you're going to be with for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And then to that not be the case. Is that the hardest part of a breakup like this? Is it, or to maybe almost feel like, wait, I thought this was something else? Or what if you had to pinpoint the hardest part of a breakup in general, public or not?
Yeah.
Especially when you think this is the person you're gonna be with for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
What's the hardest part about that?
I think the hardest part is probably that like two people are getting hurt in a big way here. No one's winning. You know what I mean? The hardest part is no one's winning. And also you think about, the lifetime commitment, and obviously that like totally shifts your gears, and the impact it has on like your family and your friends and the connection that they had with them. Right. And it's just a total title shift of what you expect, what will be, or what the vision of what will be versus then what becomes the reality, And so I think that's like the biggest shift. But I think that's the biggest shift for like any pain we experience, like whether it's dating, whether it's being married, whether it's being engaged, or whether it's losing someone, like or something medical happens, a health thing. Like we all have this vision of what will be, and the smallest thing today could change every single bit of it. And so I think that always becomes the toughest thing with any form of grieving.
Did you ever lose faith in true love and what that could be, or if it's real or not?
I don't think I've lost faith in true love. I think I've lost faith. I don't believe soulmates exist.
Okay. Why?
I don't know. I just don't. I think there's 8 billion humans in this world, and I think in many instances you can have really deep connection with a lot of people, and I don't believe in the idea of a soulmate. And what I've also known is like the more I've worked on myself, the more I learn how to communicate, the more I understand my feelings, way easier. It's way easier to connect with people early on. Like I think what probably took me a year to build some form of connection, I could build now in 2 weeks.
Right.
Because I know how to communicate my feelings. I know how to hear people's feelings. Like I couldn't do that, and if you can't do that, then you can't show up for people, And so, that's my take.
These days, what makes you happiest?
Yeah. Happiest is what makes me feel safe is achieving, right? We nailed that. Happiest, I would say, is when I'm just like with friends, with family, with people I love, and not at all connected to work. Like I remember, this is kind of crazy. With The Bachelor, we didn't have our phones for 3 months, and I'm a phone guy, right? I'm with this thing like it's sitting right here. I'm a phone guy. When they gave that back to me, I was like, I don't want, like, please don't. And I think you get so trapped into fulfilling everyone else's buckets and pouring into individuals and making sure you respond to the email and the text and the call. You kind of lose sight of life a little bit, you know?
Do you measure your self-worth or your success based off of your achievements and accomplishing?
So I think what's really big, and I talk about this book, is like net worth is never self-worth, and accomplishments absolutely are not self-worth. They have no connection to self-worth, right? So self-worth is the validation you give yourself based on what you do and how you do it. Right. And I think all the achievements are things that like motivate me, things I feel good about, but it does not define like my character, right? No one can take your character from you. Everyone can talk shit. People could say this or that. No one can take your character from you. And so, yeah, I think like that's truly what self-worth is.
10 years ago, do you think you could have imagined you'd be in the position you're in?
No chance.
What do you think you were, I guess, 35
Oh
years
my
old, what would
God.
the title been?
10
Something
years
vice
ago,
president?
either, something in banking or like maybe I took that shift into the sports agent world.
Right.
I did think at 35 I'd be married with kids, but here we are.
Does that make you feel more of a pressure or not because you, I guess, had that expectation or that thought?
I've really tried to not give myself like put too much pressure on myself based on age. I think it could be like super toxic and like force your hand into things that become unhealthy. But it's if I said it wasn't top of mind, I'd be lying.
Right.
I had Colton Underwood on my podcast recently, and he was telling me that I didn't realize that when you, I think when you go to war, when you serve in any capacity, I don't want to get this wrong, but you have to get your sperm frozen because of the potential radiation that comes with like those extremities, right? And those outlying situations. And so what he was saying is when it comes to this stuff, we need to be super preventative. Like your sperm today will be better than your sperm tomorrow.
Right.
And he was like, go freeze your sperm. So once this book shit wraps, I'm gonna go freeze my sperm.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, egg freezing has become more talked about amongst women.
Yep.
At least in my anecdotal observations over the last couple of years. But almost like sperm freezing feels like it's not caught up yet in terms of.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's just different. It's obviously like science, it's different, right? But it was the first time I heard about it.
Right.
Like, I never heard about this idea of freezing your sperm, but
it's nice too. I mean, I think like I'm curious for you, the idea of being rushed into something, that nothing good ever comes from rushing.
Yeah, no, nothing.
So the freezing gives you that sense of freedom, which to you and I, as we said, even on the financial side or the money side, that's a big word that comes up. But freedom, I think, is the most important.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I think it's so incredible that they have that they've had like advances they have with freezing your eggs and IVF. I mean, I think it's beautiful. I think it's great.
Where do you hope to be in 10 years on both personal, professional? What do you hope? I mean, when you were 25, 10 years ago, you didn't imagine you'd be sitting here today. So let's try to imagine where
let's
you might
manifest
be in 10
this.
years.
45. We're married. Got 2 kids, a dog, maybe 2 dogs. I don't know where to be living, but I imagine family. I really hope, really hope at 45. And then work-wise, I don't know. Everything's going really well right now. I run an agency too, talent management company, and that's been really doing well. It'd be great to like continue to blow that up and maybe exit it. But I don't know. Just I have money to me is freedom as well. And so I'm careful with where I spend, how I spend, because that money gives me freedom to be able to kind of like work where I want and how I want to work. And I want to continue to get to the point where that freedom just keeps increasing, and gives me the opportunity to like live life to its fullest. And what the title is or where I'm working or how I'm working, I mean, I don't care. It will be what it is, you know?
So in the spirit of the podcast name being Unlike Me,
Yeah.
who's somebody you'd like to be a little bit more like?
Denzel Washington.
Why?
He's just a badass. He's so well-spoken. He's extremely motivational. Excuse me. He's had a ton of success in his job, but also can take so much out of just his job and give back in so many ways to the communities that he serves, and his ability to just articulate what he's thinking and do it in a way that's like motivating to me is special. Big Denzel guy. Love Denzel. Who would you pick? That was the first one that came into mind. It's not like I'm like have the like Denzel on this like godly pedestal. I was just like, that was the first.
Good question. Well, my forever idol was Kobe.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Yep.
I think even from, his mentality, obviously professionally, and him was in basketball, but just kind of like that killer mentality. But then I think also you saw like he was so proud to be a dad, and how much he cared about that. And you can tell, I love when I see, especially athletes, because I love sports, but when you see these athletes that are such competitors, but then they'll start crying when they see their daughter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Scotty just won the Masters.
Exactly.
Right? Did you see those interviews?
Yeah, I know.
Those are incredible.
I know. He's just like, I want to go home.
I just won the Masters, but all I want to do is go home.
What a good week for that guy.
Oh my
Win the
God.
Masters, become a dad.
Killed it. That's like, what more could you do? Honestly,
Literally nothing.
Hang him up.
I know. But I appreciate you, man, for taking the time and coming on. I'm super excited for tonight. I'm excited for people to be able. I'm excited to personally read Talk Money to Me.
Yeah.
I'm excited for more people to read it. Where's the best place? I know Amazon. Is that the best place for people to get it?
Probably.
Where do you get the most profit per unit?
I think Amazon, but you get it
so buy it
Amazon,
on
Barnes
Amazon.
and Noble, Target, wherever, it's out there. But yeah, buy it. Let me know what you think. Shoot me a message. I'll be curious, and it'll be good because the next steps of your relationship are probably cohabitating. So
exactly,
it's a good time to look at it.
Anyways, thank you so much for coming on, man, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. Let's have a good time tonight.
Let's do it.
Cool.